Have you ever noticed how some people seem to stumble into fortune at every turn while you can't even walk to the mailbox without tripping over your own feet and landing face first on the pavement? Your neighbor Dave flipped a few stocks and upgraded to a lakefront property. But the moment you buy a single share, the company announces bankruptcy proceedings the very next morning. Your cousin started a side hustle selling candles on the internet, and now she drives a Tesla. But every time you try something new, it feels like the universe personally reaches down and flicks you on the forehead. So you pour yourself a glass of water, stare at the ceiling fan spinning above your kitchen table, and mutter the same defeated words you have been muttering for the last 20 years. Why am I so unlucky? Why does nothing ever work out for me? Why does it feel like I was born under a broken star while everyone else got handed a golden ticket? But here is the truth that no one has ever told you plainly enough to make it stick. Luck is not some mystical force dispensed by the heavens to a chosen few. When you look at luck through the lens of cognitive psychology and behavioral science, it becomes something far less romantic but infinitely more useful. Luck is the predictable output of a system you either designed on purpose or stumbled into by accident. People who are perpetually unlucky are not cursed. They are simply running a set of behavioral programs that guarantee bad outcomes over and over again, and they have been running those programs for so long that the results feel like fate. Meanwhile, people who seem supernaturally fortunate have built intricate psychological nets that catch opportunity the way a spider web catches morning dew, quietly, consistently, and without any need for magic. What you are about to read is not a feel-good pep talk. It is not going to pat you on the back and tell you everything will be fine if you just believe hard enough. Think of it instead as a chiropractic adjustment for your entire life philosophy, a recalibration of the mental framework that has been producing your so-called bad luck for years or even decades. By the time you reach the final sentence, you will understand exactly why your luck has been terrible, exactly what mechanisms have been keeping you trapped in that cycle, and exactly what concrete steps you can take starting today to snap that cycle in half and begin attracting outcomes that currently feel impossible. Let us begin with one of the most unsettling experiments in the history of behavioral psychology, because it reveals something disturbing about how human beings construct superstition and then let that superstition ruin their lives. B.F. Skinner, the legendary behaviorist, once placed 8 hungry pigeons inside individual boxes rigged with automatic feeders. Every 15 seconds, the feeder dispensed a pellet of food regardless of what the pigeon was doing at the time. The pigeon did not need to press a lever or peck a target. The food just appeared on a fixed schedule, completely independent of the bird's behavior. What happened next was bizarre and deeply instructive. Within a short period of time, each pigeon developed its own unique ritual. One bird began spinning counterclockwise in tight circles. Another started bobbing its head into the corner of the box over and over. A third developed a strange swinging motion with its body as if performing some kind of dance. These pigeons had made an error in causal reasoning. Each one had noticed that it happened to be doing something specific right before the food appeared, and its tiny brain concluded that the action caused the food. So it repeated the action obsessively, convinced it had cracked the code of the universe, when in reality the food would have come anyway no matter what it did. Skinner called this superstitious behavior, and he noted with dry academic amusement that humans do exactly the same thing on a much grander and more expensive scale. Let me give you a modern American example that will probably hit close to home. There is a man we will call Steve, a 52-year-old small business owner in the suburbs of Atlanta who runs a struggling diner. Every time his monthly revenue dips below a certain threshold, Steve does not sit down and analyze his menu pricing or look at his online reviews or consider whether his parking lot needs better lighting. Instead, Steve drives 40 minutes to see a psychic in a strip mall who charges him $150 per session. The psychic told him to rearrange his tables so they face east. Steve spent an entire weekend moving furniture. The psychic told him to wear a green shirt every Tuesday because green attracts prosperity energy. Steve now owns 9 green shirts. His wife Linda stands in the kitchen with her arms crossed and says, "Steve, I have been telling you for 6 months that the grease trap smells terrible and customers can smell it from the dining room." 3 people left reviews online saying the restaurant stinks. Maybe spend that psychic money on a plumber instead. Steve waves her off with genuine irritation because he truly believes the psychic holds the key. He says, "You do not understand. Linda, this is about aligning my energy with abundance. You cannot put a price on spiritual alignment." And here is the tragedy of Steve's situation laid bare under the bright lights of psychological science. Steve has surrendered his locus of control to something external and unverifiable while simultaneously ignoring the internal factors he could change today at minimal cost. He is Skinner's pigeon spinning in circles, utterly convinced that the spinning causes the food, while the real mechanism that determines his success, the quality of his product, the cleanliness of his restaurant, the friendliness of his service, sits completely neglected. The people who are genuinely lucky, the ones whose businesses thrive and whose investments pay off and whose relationships flourish, are not lucky because the stars aligned. They are lucky because they replaced superstitious rituals with controllable routines. They wake up early and wipe down the front windows of their shop before opening. They memorize the names of regular customers and ask about their kids. They read 1 article per week about trends in their industry. They make 15 sales calls instead of 5. They do not do these things because a psychic told them to. They do them because each small controllable action is another roll of the dice, and the more times you roll the dice, the more likely you are to land on the number you need. Luck is not a lightning bolt from a clear sky. It is a statistical inevitability that emerges when you increase your number of meaningful attempts. Now let us move to the second psychological trap that keeps people stuck in cycles of bad fortune. And this one is sneaky because it disguises itself as something harmless. Behavioral economists have identified a phenomenon called mental accounting, which describes the way our brains categorize and assign value to money based not on its objective worth but on the emotional story attached to it. When money has no clear identity, no name, no designated purpose, our brain files it under the category of disposable resources, things that can vanish without consequence. And when money lives in that category, it practically begs to be spent impulsively because the brain perceives no meaningful loss in letting it go. Benjamin Franklin understood this principle 250 years before behavioral economists gave it a name. Franklin grew up desperately poor, one of 17 children in a household that could barely keep candles lit, yet he became one of the wealthiest and most influential men in American history. One of his core financial habits was giving every dollar a specific job. This portion is for investing in my education. This portion is for building my printing business. This portion is for securing my old age. Every dollar had a name and a destiny, and because of that, every dollar was treated with respect and deployed strategically rather than frittered away on momentary comfort. Contrast that with a woman we will call Karen, a 53-year-old suburban mom in New Jersey who clips coupons religiously and will drive 20 minutes out of her way to save $2 on a bulk pack of paper towels. Karen prides herself on being frugal. She tells her friends she never pays full price for anything. But then Karen has a bad day. Maybe her adult son said something dismissive on the phone, or maybe her husband worked late again without calling, or maybe she just felt that hollow, aching emptiness that creeps in during the quiet hours of the afternoon. And on those bad days, Karen drives to the outlet mall and spends $800 on a designer handbag she will use twice before it disappears into the back of her closet. Her husband Mike comes home and sees the bag on the counter and says, "Karen, we just said last week that we need to save for the roof repair. What is this?" And Karen says, "I deserve it, Mike. Nobody appreciates anything I do around here. This is my reward for putting up with all of you." And here is what is actually happening beneath the surface of that interaction. Karen's money has no identity beyond its immediate emotional utility. When she clips coupons, she is playing a game that makes her feel responsible and in control. When she buys the handbag, she is using money as an emotional painkiller to fill a void that has nothing to do with fashion or luxury. The $2 savings and the $800 splurge exist in completely separate mental accounts that never communicate with each other, which is why Karen can feel simultaneously frugal and financially strapped without ever recognizing the contradiction. People who attract consistent good fortune treat money differently at a fundamental level. They assign every dollar an aspirational identity. This is my family's safety net. This is my future freedom fund. This is the seed money for the opportunity one have not found yet, but I know is coming. When money has a name, it becomes almost impossible to waste because spending it frivolously feels like betraying a promise you made to yourself. And that sense of intentionality, that feeling of I know exactly why I earn and exactly where my money is going, creates a psychological posture that attracts more opportunity because your brain is perpetually scanning for ways to fulfill those named purposes rather than perpetually scanning for ways to numb your pain. The third trap is perhaps the most dangerous because it operates invisibly and most people never even realize they are caught in it. It has to do with the people you surround yourself with, and the science on this is staggering in its implications. Nicholas Christakis, a sociologist and physician at Harvard, conducted groundbreaking research on what he calls social contagion. His team analyzed data from thousands of people tracked over decades and discovered that happiness, sadness, obesity, smoking habits, and even financial behaviors spread through social networks like viruses. If your close friend becomes happy, your own probability of becoming happy increases by about 15%. If your friend's friend becomes happy, someone you might not even know personally, your probability of happiness still increases by about 10%. The effect radiates outward through 3 degrees of separation. This means that luck and unluckiness are, in a very literal neurological sense, contagious. The people you spend time with are not just influencing your mood in the moment. They are rewiring your brain's baseline expectations about what is possible for your life. Let me paint a picture of how this plays out in the real world. A man we will call Robert, 56 years old, lives outside of Chicago and meets his old college buddies every other Saturday at a bar. Every single gathering follows the same script. Someone opens with a complaint about the economy. Someone else piles on with a story about how their kid cannot find a decent job. A third friend brings up how property taxes are crushing him. They take turns cataloging everything that is wrong with the world and with their lives, and whoever has the most dramatic tale of woe gets the most sympathetic nods and the next round bought for them. Suffering becomes social currency in that group. It is the price of admission. Then one Saturday Robert makes the mistake of saying something positive. He mentions that he started walking 3 miles every morning and that he has been sleeping better and feeling more energetic, and he might even try to start a small consulting business on the side using his 30 years of experience in logistics. The table goes silent for a moment and then his buddy Frank says, "Must be nice to have that kind of free time. Some of us are too busy dealing with real problems." Another friend says, "You think you are better than us now?" And a third one says, "Consulting? In this economy? Good luck with that, pal." And just like that, Robert's tiny spark of optimism is extinguished by the collective breath of everyone around him. This is what psychologists sometimes compare to a bucket of crabs. If you put a single crab in a bucket, it will climb out easily. But if you put a dozen crabs in a bucket, none of them will ever escape because every time one starts climbing, the others reach up and pull it back down. Nobody coordinates this behavior. Nobody decides to do it consciously. It is just an instinctive response. If I cannot get out, then you cannot get out either. Your misery validates my misery, and your escape threatens my self-concept. Robert eventually did something that felt terrifying and socially risky. He stopped going to the Saturday bar gatherings. He did not announce it dramatically or send a long text explaining his decision. He simply started saying he was busy, and over the course of several months the invitations slowed and then stopped. In their place, Robert joined a morning walking group at a local park where he met people who talked about what they were building rather than what was falling apart. He joined a small business meetup where retired professionals shared advice about starting second-act careers. The people in these new groups said things like, "I believe in you," and "What is your timeline and how can I help?" Within 8 months, Robert launched his consulting firm and landed his first 3 clients through connections he made in those groups. He did not become lucky. He relocated himself into an environment where luck was the default outcome rather than the exception. Now I want to address the deepest psychological principle underlying all of this because it is the foundation upon which everything else rests. Most people believe the sequence works like this. First you succeed, then you feel happy. You get the promotion and then you celebrate. You lose the weight and then you feel confident. You make the money and then you feel secure. But positive psychology research, particularly the work of Martin Seligman and his colleagues, has demonstrated conclusively that the sequence actually works in reverse. Happiness is not the result of success. Happiness is the fuel that makes success possible. When your brain is in a positive state, your cognitive field literally expands. You see more possibilities. You are more creative. You are more resilient when things go wrong. You are more attractive to other people because humans are instinctively drawn to warmth and optimism. You make better decisions because your prefrontal cortex functions at a higher level when it is not being hijacked by anxiety and despair. Conversely, when your brain is locked in a negative state, your perceptual field narrows dramatically. You become cognitively rigid. You see threats everywhere and opportunities nowhere. You push people away with your negativity. You make impulsive short-term decisions because your brain is in survival mode rather than growth mode. You could be standing right next to the opportunity of a lifetime and you would not see it because your stressed, narrow brain has filtered it out as irrelevant noise. Think about Abraham Lincoln, a man who failed at almost everything he tried for most of his adult life. He failed in business. He lost multiple elections. He suffered devastating personal losses. He battled what we would today probably diagnose as clinical depression. And yet Lincoln cultivated a habit that saved him over and over again: humor. Even in his darkest moments, he cracked jokes. When he lost a political race, he told his supporters the path was slippery, but I have not fallen off a cliff yet. That refusal to let his emotional state collapse entirely, even in the face of objective failure, is what kept his cognitive field wide enough to eventually see and seize the ultimate opportunity, the presidency itself. Lincoln was not lucky. Lincoln maintained the psychological conditions under which luck becomes statistically probable. So here is what all of this means for your life starting right now, today, this very hour. The first thing you must do is identify and eliminate your pigeon rituals, the superstitious behaviors that give you an illusion of control without providing any actual influence over your outcomes. Stop looking for magic solutions outside yourself. Stop waiting for some external sign that your luck is about to change. Instead, build a routine of small, controllable daily actions that put you in contact with reality rather than fantasy. Make your bed every single morning. That 10-second act sends a signal to your brain that says, I am a person who takes charge of my environment. Clean your workspace before you start your day. Reach out to one person who might be able to help you or who you might be able to help. Read 10 pages of a book that teaches you something new. Each of these tiny actions is a dice roll, and luck favors the person who rolls the most dice, not the person who prays the hardest before rolling once. The second thing you must do is give your money a name. Open your banking app today and rename your savings accounts. Do not leave them as generic labels like Savings Account 1 and Savings Account 2. Name them something that stirs emotion and purpose. My family's emergency shield. My future freedom. My next chapter fund. The opportunity account. When your money has a name, it has dignity and weight, and you will find it almost physically painful to waste it on impulsive purchases that serve no purpose beyond numbing a momentary emotional ache. You will start to see money not as a tool for immediate comfort, but as a living, growing entity that is working on your behalf toward a future you have deliberately chosen. The third thing you must do, and this one requires courage, is audit your social environment and make hard decisions about who gets access to your time and emotional energy. Look at the 5 people you spend the most time with and ask yourself honestly, after I spend time with these people, do I feel energized and hopeful, or do I feel drained and pessimistic? If certain relationships consistently leave you feeling worse about yourself and your prospects, you do not owe those relationships your continued participation just because they have existed for a long time. You are allowed to outgrow people. You are allowed to seek out communities where encouragement and ambition and mutual support are the norm rather than the exception. Find groups where people celebrate each other's wins rather than diminishing them. Find people who respond to your dreams with enthusiasm rather than skepticism. Luck is contagious, and you get to choose which strain you want to catch. Here is the final truth I want to leave burning in your mind. Your luck in the second half of your life is not determined by your parents or your birth chart or the neighborhood you grew up in or the mistakes you made in your 20s and 30s. It is determined by the story you tell yourself when you look in the mirror every morning. It is determined by the words you allow to come out of your mouth about yourself and your future. It is determined by whether you choose today to be a person who rolls dice or a person who waits for lightning. Every single person who appears impossibly lucky from the outside is simply someone who made the decision to build systems that produce fortunate outcomes rather than waiting passively for fortune to arrive uninvited. They are not more blessed than you. They are not more deserving than you. They simply made different choices about how to spend their time, their money, their attention, and their social energy. And those choices compounded over months and years into what looks from the outside like supernatural good fortune, but is actually just the inevitable mathematical result of consistently doing the right small things in the right order with the right people. You have already demonstrated something remarkable just by reading this far. You invested your time and attention in understanding the psychology of luck rather than scrolling past or giving up halfway through. That sustained focus puts you ahead of the vast majority of people who will never examine why their lives feel stuck, because examining it requires the kind of honest self-confrontation that most people avoid their entire lives. So take what you have learned today and put it into motion immediately, not tomorrow, not next week, not when the timing feels right, but today. Change one routine. Name one account. Send one message to someone who makes you feel alive and hopeful. These are small acts, but they are the first notes of an entirely different song. And once that song starts playing, you will be astonished at how quickly the melody of your life begins to change.